Welcome to the Crafting Character Podcast. Steve Carter here, and in association with my good friends at CDF Capital and Food for the Hungry, I'm excited today to introduce you to my friend, Jay Kim. Jay Kim is the lead teaching pastor at WestGate Church in San Jose, California. They got multiple campuses, and before we dive into a great conversation, he's an incredible teacher, incredible pastor. He's the author of Analog Church, which we're going to dive into because I love the concepts behind this book. I want you to get a little taste of Jay's communication style. This is something we typically do because for many of you, you may never have heard of WestGate Church or never heard of Jay, but I want you to hear his sound, and then we'll dive into a conversation about the craft of communication. And of course, we'll talk about character because we want to be the kind of people, the kind of preachers and leaders and pastors where our character leads the way. So tune in and listen to this.
And in the midst of our anxiety and tension and angst, in our desperate search for certainty, I often place my hope and my trust in the false promises of false gods. Now, the false gods in our midst don't look like the gods of Greek mythology, like Dionysius or Zeus or whoever else. Our idolatry is far more sophisticated, but make no mistake, there are false promises and false gods luring and tempting us in all around us. We often place our hope and our trust in the false promises of false gods like success and achievement. Maybe if we could just succeed enough or achieve enough, we'll experience the meaning, purpose, and joy that we long for. Maybe we believe that it's in financial security that we will achieve meaning, purpose, and joy. Or maybe it's a political ideology or just leisure or temporary pleasure. The list goes on and on. And when these false promises fail us, our disappointment and fury reveal the depth and fervor of our misguided belief that earthly kings and kingdoms will somehow provide the meaning, purpose, and joy that we are all so desperate for. And this is why Paul, over and over again in his letter to the early Christians in Thessalonica, reminds them to keep their hearts and minds fixed on the promise of the parousia, not of any false god, but the parousia, the coming, the arrival of Jesus, who has come and will come again. Because Jesus is the only king, and his kingdom is the only kingdom that can actually fulfill the promise of meaning, purpose, and joy that every human being longs for.
Well, Jay Kim, thanks so much for joining us on the Crafting Character Podcast.
Yeah, man. Thanks for having me.
Definitely, man. Hey, give us a little backstory. How did you get to WestGate? And yeah, just give us a little backstory where you come from.
Yeah, absolutely. So Silicon Valley, greater San Jose area is home. Been here basically my whole life. I currently serve on staff at WestGate. It's actually my second go around.
Boomerang.
So, I left and came back. It's like I tell people I graduated high school, went away to college for 4 years, and then I came back home sort of thing. I was here for a couple of years as a teaching pastor from 2012 to 2014. No, that's 2014 to 2016.
Okay.
And then 2016 to 2020, middle of 2020, I served on staff at a church called Vintage Faith in Santa Cruz, sleepy little beach town that we both love.
Yes.
And, our good friend Dan Kimball. And so served with him there, led there, and then came back in August of 2020. And am serving on the executive team and overseeing our teaching and preaching. And so I guess, as of this recording, been back almost a year or something like that.
What a year it's been, man.
Wild. Yeah.
Well, it's got to be kind of nice, though, that you've come back to a place that feels like home, like it was familiar. So you knew the people. You have a really great relationship with the other lead pastor who'd been here for 20 years, Steve Clifford. So it's cool to see that you've been able to step in. Now, we just listened to a clip from the introduction, the week one of the Future of everything. And you guys are going through First Thessalonians.
Yep.
Unpack kind of how this series came to be, and then what you were specifically trying to accomplish in this talk.
Yeah, specifically, I think, our mindset for the series wasn't a rhythmic thing. So what I mean by that is it wasn't, hey man, we've done a lot of like topical stuff, we need a book of the Bible.
Right.
What it was a response really to the season that's been. Yeah. And for me personally, and for a couple others on our teaching team, there was sort of this like collective sense. I mean, we're constantly talking about the new normal, and we're constantly sort of racked with the anxiety of not knowing what the new normal is going to be. And so in a weird way, we found ourselves like leaning forward, but not knowing if the other side of the lean was like just a drop off a cliff,
right,
or if everything was going to be okay or whatever. And the strange thing about it was, on one hand, it felt like leaning forward felt like we were living into the future a little bit, but the conversations we started having were like, no, I think what's happening is we're not living into the, rather than saying like, man, let's just be in the present. That's crucially important, but there's another part of us like, I don't think we're living into the future enough.
Wow.
Like, what about, yes, we don't know what'll happen tomorrow, but here's what's crazy and wild about the biblical story is like, what we do know is what happens in the end, yes. And tomorrow is tomorrow, but there's another tomorrow after that and another tomorrow after that. But what's the future of everything? Not just the future of like this month or next year, 2023 or whatever. Let's spend some time talking about the future of everything. And that led us down the road of, man, it feels like Paul's first letter to the Christians in Thessalonica get at that. And it's pretty clear in the text. I mean, the theme is woven throughout. Paul's just instructing these passionate Christians who really like don't know what it means to be a Christian, how to live as a Christian. All they know is they're just compelled by Jesus and the way of Jesus. And the thing he weaves into all these like encouragements and challenges is, hey, we know how the story ends.
Yeah.
Christ is coming back.
Yeah. I mean, it's amazing because even in the old like kind of hymn, Christ has died, Christ is has risen, Christ will come again.
Yeah.
We forget that.
To come again.
We forget to come again, and that's that this series, as I listened to it, I just felt like you guys kept that reminder and that beautiful refrain, and it was really, really helpful for me in this season. What I've always appreciated about you, and we met, a number of months ago, and I feel like I told my wife this, but it's you are just really, really thoughtful, and your preaching is really thoughtful. I'm sitting in your office, and there's books galore, and I can see there's a thoughtfulness to the way you structure talks and the way that you preach, and we're going to talk a little bit about Analog Church in a moment, but like the way that you write, there is deep thoughtfulness with deep intentionality, but man, there is a theology that you hold and that you live out of. Where was that shaped? Like, is this something that, man, college, has this been like, did this kind of sound, did this kind of come, from a mentor? I mean, or is this just something over 20 years doing ministry? This is just, you've just found this.
Yeah, that's a great question, man. First of all, thank you. So encouraging, and especially coming from you, someone who I have such deep admiration and respect for as a teacher and communicator. I've thought about that a little bit because of questions people have asked me in the past. A couple things come to mind. So I said earlier, I grew up in the Silicon Valley, been here basically my whole life, but I wasn't born here. I was born in, I was born not even in this country. I was born in South Korea, and my parents, rough marriage. My mom has this encounter with the risen Christ when I'm 2, realizes she can't raise her son in that environment, tries to sort of, compel my dad to go to church and all that kind of stuff. He wrestled with demons his entire life, some vices, addictions he can shake. And So anyways, long story short, we moved to the States, to California, when I was like 4.
Wow.
And then I was just home, like with my aunt. My mom was working and my aunt watched me, and she only spoke Korean to me. So I didn't go to school till I was in first grade when I was 6. And I didn't speak a word of English.
Wow.
Like my aunt didn't let me watch TV, so I didn't have like the English. So it was all Korean all day. So when I went to school, I spoke no English. They threw me into like ESL classes. And I think, long story short, one of the things that did, I also moved a bunch. I went to 4 elementary schools in 5 years and 2 high schools. And we moved 14 times between 1st and 12th grade when I was a kid, me and my mom. So not ideal. But it made it really challenging for me to embed myself in a group of like really good friends. I had great friends at church, but 5 days a week at school, I was pretty alone for the most part. And so I found myself like deep diving into 2 things. One, books and comic books early on,
Yes.
big into comic books, and then just books, reading books. And then 2, out of my fascination with books and comic books, just writing a lot. And it was all like gibberish and, whatever. But so I think what it did was like, it was hard growing up, but it sort of shaped me in a particular way. Like I find real comfort, and this is for good and for bad. I find real comfort and joy in sitting with my own thoughts.
Yeah.
And so that part of it not only comes natural to me now, but it's like a part of the teaching process that I so thoroughly enjoy.
I love that. Sitting with my own thoughts and finding deep joy in that. Talk about how that plays out in your prep process.
Yeah. So immerse myself in the text. Scott McKnight says, the intention, Blue Parakeet, paraphrasing here, but like, we're not really supposed to read the Bible's supposed to read us. So I just try to do that prayerfully, asking the Spirit of God to lead me, to open me, so that he might speak to me through his word. So I just let, the word have me, essentially, for as long as I can. And we have the benefit at our church of having a rhythm where I typically don't prep week to week. I usually have a week or 2 in between. And if I'm teaching 2-3 weeks in a row, it usually means I have 2-3 weeks where I'm not teaching beforehand, so that I have enough time. So I have that built-in time into my schedule to just let the word sort of have me. And once I feel like it's embedded in me, and like a pragmatic cue for me is if I can just find myself reciting, if not the whole passage, key sections of the passage just from memory. And my goal always there is to have the text reverberating in me everywhere I go. Wow. One of the reasons that's helpful, even on a pragmatic level, people ask me all the time, is like, where do you come up with stories and illustrations? Well, like, if the text has you and it becomes the lens through which you see your life, getting your car washed at the car wash becomes a thing, you're like, whoa, that thing I just saw at the car wash connects to the parousia of Christ, this kind of stuff comes alive. So I try to do that. I just let the text have me. And then from there, once it becomes your lens, it's just like, for me at least, my brain's just firing. And then it's practical stuff. I know you do note cards, which is killer. I just have a working Google Doc and I'm constantly just punching ideas. Sometimes they're voice memos. Like, like in line at Safeway, random dude, buys whatever, and I'm just constantly punching things like that in, or like taking photos of weird things I see. And
I love that because, it's when you buy a car and then all of a sudden, you pull off the lot and you're driving the first couple weeks and you're like, oh, there's another one, there's another one. And there's like, you just start to see it but before you didn't ever think about seeing your car, right? Because it wasn't on your mind. Now it is, but the gospel's the same way. You can see it all around. And the ways that what's so beautiful is it's not just thoughts like that you're thinking, but it's thoughts that you're capturing.
Yeah, that's
you're
great.
Capturing them, and you whether it is in line at Safeway, but you can come back. So now you got these Google Docs, and it's voice memo. It's got pictures. Talk us through what that looks like in your prep.
Yeah, I mean, typically, those two things, so two things run parallel. I mean, the first thing is letting the word have me, letting the ideas have me. That's all just immersive, and it's prayer and it's Holy Spirit stuff. And once I do that, then those two things are happening parallel. One, I'm looking at life through the lens of the word, and the ideas and what I sense God wants to say. And then parallel to that, I'm just doing the work, like I'm grinding. I'm just reading commentaries and finding all the bits and pieces and just immersing myself into what people way smarter than me have to say about what's happening, in Thessalonica. What was Thessalonica? Why did it call it Thessalonica? Mount Olympus is right across the bay. What was Mount Olympus? Like they would have seen Mount Olympus visually from the city every day. How does that, impact the way this audience would have heard like these words? And I'm doing all of that work. And then typically at the end of that, what I have is just a jumbled mess of notes. And that's a beautiful thing, actually, the jumbled mess.
It doesn't scare you?
No, I enjoy it.
Okay.
Yeah, I enjoy it. I think a part of it, I mean, at that point, it becomes sort of musical for me. Huh. So I grew up playing music in several uber mediocre local bands, playing in front of like 3 friends or whatever at the local, bowling alley. And so... yeah, it doesn't scare me. It reminds me a lot of jamming with my friends. We just like pull out our guitars and crank the amps up, and we're just going. And it sounds like a jumbled mess, but like there are these moments in the mess that the magic happens. And then this was rare, but sometimes it's like everyone's playing. Sometimes it's like different keys, like I'm playing in G and you're playing in whatever, B flat. And that's weird. And we're figuring it out, but then every now and then, without even saying like, "Oh, dude, what was that?" Or that often happened. But every now and then, there'd be these moments where like you wouldn't have to verbalize anything, and everybody kind of finds their way into this pocket.
Yeah.
And it starts with the mess. Always, like no song we ever wrote, as mediocre as they were, no song ever started with like 1, 2, 3, 4, and everyone just no way. Like. Yep. It's all jumbled mess, and then you find your way. And that moment of like getting from out of the pocket into the pocket is really special. Yeah. And I enjoy that. Yeah. I love it. And I think so no, I'm not scared by the mess. I've learned to love it. Yeah. I mean, and there's definitely like pressure sometimes with the time crunch. It's like, it's like Thursday and it's still a jumbled mess. That's not good. I mean, that's very rare, but again, I understand that's a part of just, the setup we have here with multiple teachers and all of that.
Yeah. Talk about that, because you guys have multiple teachers, but it's not kind of simulcast to the multiple campuses. Right. So you have live teaching, but you guys are teaching the same text. Yeah. How does that work when you're in your middle of your mess and another communicator is like, "Oh, I already landed the plane." Yeah. How does that work?
So typically, I mean, this is all pragmatic. So we're live everywhere, meaning every weekend in English, we have 2 teachers. Okay. There's at least 2 teachers every weekend. And so essentially we push our teachers to work 2 to 3 weeks out. And so the way we make that work is because I oversee teaching here, I have a meeting 3 weeks before and often it's me and another person, but sometimes it's not me at all. I have off Sundays. And so, but still 3 weeks out, I'll meet with whoever is teaching 3 weeks later.
Gotcha.
And I'll just ask for the jumbled mess. So the expectation is you have to have a jumbled mess 3 weeks out. I'm not asking you to like have a clean, clear, just bring the mess. Yeah. And that becomes like a jam session. Wow. And we sit around, the mess goes up on a board, super fun. We've learned to enjoy it. And then we're just moving stuff, like try an A flat here, try a C sharp there, that kind of thing. Yeah. And typically out of that meeting, what we have is at least a basic structure of where it's going to go. And then if I'm not teaching, at that point, I'm handing off to the 2 teachers. And typically, I never have to say, it just happens naturally. There's almost always sort of one person amongst the 2 teachers that's sort of driving the conversation, and the other I mean, it's collaborative for sure, but the other typically just sort of naturally slides into like, yeah, that sounds great. Hey, I think I might adjust this. And what we ask for is like the path you take to get to the destination can diverge, but we have to arrive at the same destination. So, and it's worked out, fairly well so far.
And the destination that you guys arrived to is life group questions?
That's one of the destinations.
Okay.
Although what we're pushing for now is rather than trying to put that pressure or onus on our teachers to try to be really, synced up, what we're telling our curriculum team is, hey, just be broad. And they always have access to both teachers' notes and both teachers' sets of slides, so they know where the campuses are going, and they'll just pull from that and say, hey, what's shareable? They'll include like basic questions like, hey, which campus did you go to? Man, what was a highlight for you? And sometimes things will come up. I was like, oh, I didn't hear that at my campus.
Yeah.
And then it becomes like a positive thing. They can kind of chat and share. But by end destination, what I mean is like where you land the plane in terms of either the call to action or the question or the reminder, whatever it is.
Yep.
And often it's verbatim. So different teachers do different things, but most of our teachers manuscript the ending. Not always, but typically. And so the ending almost always lands almost verbatim.
Wow.
So, yeah.
And how often are you teaching? Is it in the 20s, the 30s? How often typically does that look like? And is it primarily one campus, or do you go back and forth?
Yeah. So there's two primary teachers here, myself and then Steve Clifford, who's currently the lead pastor. So the two of us are like, man, so we essentially, what we say is we have 100+ teaching opportunities because it's live at both campuses.
Right.
So between the two of us, we probably cover about 60.
Yeah.
So 30-30 each. It's an even split.
Yeah.
We're both 30-30. And I'd say probably 80% of that is at our, we don't call it our main campus. It's at our largest campus, our first campus, where the church started. And then, it might be like every 6 weeks, every 8 weeks, we're going over to our other campus, which means that campus is hearing from Steve or I every 3 to 4 weeks, which is really nice. And then our campus pastor there teaches quite a bit. And then we actually have a teaching pastor who, teaches quite a bit as well. And then he also oversees like all the curriculum. So that's been helpful where he can just tie in life group questions and all that.
It's amazing. Well, again, I've never heard it described in that kind of that celebrating the mess, bringing into a little jam session, and then, getting into the pocket. But that makes so much sense. And what freedom that is just like, hey, bring your best mess, and then let's chop it up together. Let's see what kind of symphony comes. That's really, really beautiful. Okay, I want to transition because I was given a book called Analog Church, and I was so curious at first. Like when I first saw it, I was like, okay, is this gonna be like? I was so curious. Like, what is this book gonna actually be about? Obviously, it forward by Scott McKnight had me. I really liked the cover, but there was just the subtitle: "Why We Need Real People, Places, and Things in the Digital Age." And I just found myself like reading through it, and I couldn't put it down. I felt like and again, it was this. I didn't know you at this part, but I was like, "Who is this?" Like, I feel like, man, the things that he's saying, and then I came to find out, oh yeah, I've seen this guy because I've checked in on Vintage out in Santa Cruz, and I that's him. But tell us a little bit of the backstory. How did this book come to be? Yeah. And then, I mean, it's won some awards, which is just amazing. And you'd never say that, but I get to say and brag on you, like as a friend, like this book has been really, really well received. But give us the backstory of what made you want to write this.
Yeah, sure. Again, connected to home. I've grown up. I've been in the Silicon Valley for the majority of my life. Tech mecca, like the stuff we find ourselves sort of immersing ourselves in, our smartphones and laptops, just all of that. I can drive to the campus of Apple in like 10 minutes from my front door, Google in 15, Facebook in 25, Twitter's up in the city, you know, about 45 minutes away. So it's just all here. And what that means really is that the majority of the people who make up our congregation, they're no more, almost all of them, I would say, are no more than 1 to 2 degrees removed from tech in some way. You know, either they work in tech, or their spouse, or their son, or their neighbor, you know, like it's just everywhere. And that's not a bad thing. It's like, you know, that's wonderful and great in many ways. But probably 6 years ago, the first go around when I was at WestGate, we were just like one location when I joined the team. And shortly after I joined the team, we moved to a multi-site model. And when we initially moved to the multi-site model, we just did the classic thing because we didn't know what else to do. Just like, okay, we'll have a broadcast venue, and then the other campuses will get a video teaching and all of that. And that was fine. And but I distinctly remember one day I was teaching. We had Saturday services, so it was a Saturday night, and I'm about to get up on the platform, and our service producer, she looks over at me. She's like, sweet, awesome, doing her job. She looks at me. She says, hey, JJ, remember we're like multi-site now. So when you're preaching, don't forget to look at that camera. And she points at this like little white box in the back of this big room. And she said these words. She's like, look at that camera, because that camera is the people. That's what she said, you know? And what she meant was that camera should represent to me the people who are going to be sitting in another room tomorrow, not even watching right now, but like tomorrow. So you have to pretend that great. Like, I understand what she's saying, but that whole, and I don't even remember what I was preaching on, the whole sermon, I remember viscerally feeling like, this is strange. Like I'm trying to imagine, but like, I wish I could see them, like the actual people, and why can't, you know, it was so weird. And that's not an indictment on video venues or anything like that, but I share that story to say it just triggered my thinking. Yeah. And that led me down a long road where, like, for a couple of years, I just started asking the question, like, I'm not anti-digital. I love digital technology, and I think it offers us so many gifts and advantages. But at a certain point, I started asking, like, man, is there a way in which our leveraging of digital technologies might be shaping and influencing and forming and unforming and reforming our ecclesiology? And so then I just started deep diving into like Marshall McLuhan and Neil Postman. And I was like, no, like we have to think about this as it pertains to how we understand what it means to be the church. And so those thoughts and conversations and then notes and then blog posts turned into a book.
So okay, the question I've always wondered is, when did you submit the manuscript?
I think it was, let's see.
Pre-COVID?
Pre-COVID.
Okay.
Well before COVID.
That's what I thought. So it's pre-COVID, like in many ways. So
done writing long before COVID.
Yeah, so there's not like a ton of us are in the digital conversation. Yeah. But it's picking up traction and steam. Then COVID hits. Yeah. You know, this book drops.
It came out the same month we went on lockdown.
Yeah, that's right. Yeah. So like I just kept thinking about this, reading through it, and then as, you know, lockdown just kept adding a month, kept adding, and you're watching different people. Would there be another chapter that you'd add? Yeah. Was there something that you, or is that, I don't know if that's even a tell for like another book that you're even thinking, but like, I just like, in a sense, like, how much of this in your mind goes, gosh, like I've doubled down on what I believe in this, or how much is like, okay, I would flex here in this way, if that makes sense.
Totally. Yeah, it's both. Yeah. It's both. So at the core of sort of human experience, when I think about that, I've doubled down. Yeah. Like I think COVID has proven, in my mind, without doubt, that embodied humans need embodied humans. And if we believe that the church is the place to be most human, and I don't mean like to feel most human, I mean like most human in the way that God intended humans to be, like Imago Dei, human flourishing, not that we'll ever experience that in full until the return of Christ, but to at least embody that and pursue that together. If that's true of the church, then to me, it feels like COVID has shown us that includes like embodied presence with one another. So I've doubled down for sure. And I think a lot of people feel that, On the other hand, if I had to add a chapter, or if I could add a chapter, which you can't, in books like this, I probably would post-COVID speak to hybridity. I'm pretty like, I'm pretty like aggressive in the book on my position.
Yeah.
Written before COVID. I will readily admit, and I've admitted on, on other podcasts recently, like, yeah, COVID definitely changed my level of appreciation for the gift that is digital. And now, as we're even coming out of the pandemic, as I think about how shaken we've been by this whole season, and there's a lot to this, right? Like misinformation and who knows, all of that stuff. But pastorally, my heart just goes out. It's like, it's confusing times. Yeah. So I understand that, like for us here at WestGate, I understand that still probably, I think like 2/3 of our people are online. Like I get it, and so in that way, I'm more grateful than I was before. Because before, to me, it was just like, we don't need, like, you don't have to do the digital thing. Why aren't you coming out? Now it's like, I get it, I get it to a certain extent. So I have thoughts on hybridity and sort of a hierarchy of hybridity and considering that thoughtfully as church leaders. Yeah. But that's probably the one thing I would add if I could.
Now moving forward, because when did California open up where you guys felt comfortable having services?
Yeah, live? It was like shortly before Easter.
So
like late March, early April.
Okay.
Gosh. And then it was later than that when we were able to go inside. So we've been inside only for, I don't know, maybe like 4 weeks or something like that at this point.
So what have you seen when you've talked about kind of this fully human, this human flourishing, this like ache, as your people have started to walk back in, how do you create through your preaching, but also just through the welcoming back, just this, hey, like, we want you to flourish. Mm-hmm. But after a year of, in California more so than most states, more detachment or more isolation in a lot of ways. How have you guys been able to kind of just start to really step back into that in this season?
Yeah. There's a lot there. I'll share one thing. We've begun and are planning on doing our best to lead our people into joy this summer.
Yeah.
And it sounds so simple, but I felt like this past year, not just because of COVID, but because of so many things, I was just robbed of joy, like all the other pieces I felt like were in place. Like, I feel like, I was resilient and I was gritty, and so was everyone else around me. And we were like grinding and, like, don't give up and let's go. We can do this, climb this mountain, but it felt very much in hindsight like, oh, the missing piece was joy. We were just like, we were joylessly toiling. And there is such a thing as joyful labor. And that's a beautiful thing. So, we're not like, hey, it's all easy now, so let's just party.
Right.
That's not what we're saying at all. Like, there's hard stuff ahead and maybe harder stuff ahead. I don't know. But we're going to do our best to like lean our people into joy. So what we're asking along those lines, and this may be more practical than you want it to be, we're just going to ask people to like linger and celebrate. And we're going to try to create space for that, like food trucks and live music out on our patio, just simple things. We're going to barbecue one Sunday and just, stuff that feel, and we're a fairly large church, even though 2/3 of our people aren't coming, there's like still a lot of people coming to church. And like it'll cost us a lot of money and stuff, but like unanimously as a team, we were like, this is like well worth it, because I think to celebrate together, again, going back to the sort of, thread through our conversation, like celebrating together is one of the best reminders of our humanness.
Right.
We're made in the image of a joyful God, I think it's Dallas Willard who said God, he has this beautiful thing. I think it's in Divine Conspiracy. You might know, Steve, but he's got this beautiful section where he talks about like, imagine God when he was creating the sunset and the water and the skies. And then he says like, he has to be the happiest being in the universe, And when we look at all our paintings of Jesus, he's like, he's never smiling, and this year has like entrenched that imagery in us.
Wow.
And I think we got to get back to like, no, yes, God gets angry, wrathful, vengeful. Yes, Jesus goes away and is quiet, solitude, all those things. But the permanence of his temperament is joy. It's like utter joy and gladness. And so we're just going to try to get people back to that.
Oh, I love that. Well, and I think it's so beautiful. Shortly as things began to kind of open up in Arizona where we live, I took my son, and he loves Subway. And so I brought him to get a little sandwich, and we walk up to the counter, and I said, "Hey, E, what do you want?" And he looks at me and he orders to me. And I said, "Oh, hey bud, like talk to the nice worker."
Yeah.
And he looks at her, and no joke, this is what he says. He goes, "I'm so sorry. You're the first human I've talked to in person that's not related to me."
So crazy.
And again, he's 12 at the time when he says this, and I just thought that was, if he could articulate, you are the first human, and I think in so many ways, the 12-year-old in all of us is having to relearn again how to find joy, how to connect, how to see, how to linger.
Yeah.
In a very efficient, very quick, but like, it's okay to exhale. It's okay to talk. It's okay to celebrate. It's okay to take in the smell of a good barbecue, and you guys have an amazing property. But I just realized like, oh man, for a lot of us who have been, and I feel like the analog church, like it just brought me back thinking about my son, just kind of going, gosh, these real connections, real relationships, like touch, embodiment. I love that you kept using that word. The just incarnational life is really, really important. And I'm not minimizing digital, and I like what you were saying about it, but I'm saying like we can't minimize this though.
Yeah,
we cannot minimize, and I think more than ever we have to double down on it.
That's right.
So
that's so good, man.
Jay, talk about like, and we've been together a few different times, but there's always, again, just this, and just this piece about you, just like, and we'll chop it up and laugh and, talk theology or food or books or church stuff. But like, there just seems to be this ease about you. Like and I don't know if it's you've just found the peace in the mess in your prep and it just fills you. But like, what are some specific practices like that you have really helped allow your character to lead the way?
Oh man. Well, yeah, I'd say the same about you, so I'd ask that question right back to you, Steve. But yeah, for me, there's a couple of things. Naturally, I'm fairly introverted, and again, it kind of plays into what I said earlier about like, I enjoy kind of the thought life and long, quiet stretches of.
But real quick, if you're listening to this, you might hear his voice, and you like smooth jazz, kind of like he's got this thoughtful, but like he's a 3 on the Enneagram.
Yeah.
So I mean, obviously you're teaching, you're writing books, like there's an achiever in you, but there's this ability, like thoughtfulness. But like, again, I just want people to see like that side of you, like, dude, you drive and get things done. Like there's a piece of it, but you found this amazing balance, at least from my interactions with you, that I've just walked away just going, man, that's a healthy 3. I've never said this publicly before, but we're watching right now in the church landscape a whole bunch of 8s. And I feel like books in some ways that are directed towards unhealthy 8s. I believe that a lot of church leaders in our generation are 3s.
Yeah.
And I keep thinking about in 2 decades, what books are going to be written about unhealthy 3s. And I look at you and my time with you walking away going, I just experienced like a healthy 3, which I don't know very many of those. And I think that's what I'm getting at in that sense of like, you've struck this balance of writing, preaching, living in the mess, great father and husband, leader, pastor, blah, 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 all that stuff. But like, I guess if that's kind of where my energy of that question is coming from, because like, I just want the listener to hear that, because I see you've got both and you're doing both well, in my opinion.
Yeah, man, I so appreciate that. It might just be that you're catching me on good days, because I'm a mess, dude. I still wrestle with all of that junk, and I might be more sophisticated in the way I veil it, sometimes, and there's a danger in that too. But there also is, that's very affirming, because I do think that God has done hard and necessary work in me in recent years. And I'll tell a quick story about you and I connecting, because this is connected to it. When you and I first met, we were at this event in Colorado several months back, and it wasn't like a pre-planned meeting, like, hey, let's chat. We just happened to sit at the same table for dinner one night, and we'd never met in person. I knew of you, and so we just immediately like, hey, I'm Jay, I'm Steve, and we start talking. I think it was probably like 30 minutes into that conversation, we both had tears in our eyes, and we're talking about our kids.
Yeah.
And I get emotional now talking about that moment, and I've heard you tell that story multiple times, and the time since. And I think if there is any health by God's grace, that's where it comes from. Not my kids necessarily, but those sweet stories and reminders of the gift that life is. It's like, that's, it's one of the reasons why I love spending time with you, because you exude the same thing. I mean, you've, in terms of like on paper and in terms of scale, I mean, like what I've gone through and my whatever, it's like minuscule to the stuff that God has brought you through, taken you into and brought you through, and all of that. And you exude the same thing, this like level of health. And I don't think it's an accident that our initial connection, and it's been like this incredible gift from God. Like you've been a gift to me.
Thank you.
From the Lord. And it's not accidental to me that it had nothing to do with anything about our books or our preaching or none of that. We didn't talk about that for our first several conversations.
100%.
We were talking about our families, our kids, how our kids have taught us, how God has spoken to us through the mouths of 5-year-olds and 8-year-olds and 12-year-olds, these little humans we're raising. And man, and even if you don't have kids, you're listening to this, you're like, I don't have kids. I mean, the reality is like we have those things that we know are the real gifts of life, like writing a book and publishing and speaking in front of a lot of people, like feels nice, temporally, I guess. But like, dude, like the stuff that moves the soul to the point where it's like, wow, what a gift.
Yeah.
I think if there is any health by God's grace, I've just become more deeply attuned to and aware of those gifts. So I have a little garden in my backyard that my mom had to help us, because my wife and I, neither of us have green thumbs. But the special thing about gardens is once you can get it going, you can keep it going. And that is one of the most spiritual, it sounds so weird. It's one of the most spiritual experiences of my daily life right now. It's going out to that garden, quietly watering. My kids are making a ruckus in the background, and I'm just watering, praying, smiling because my kids are playing, and it's gift, And in those moments, I would not trade that for any New York Times whatever.
Yeah.
You know?
Yeah.
So there you go.
Man, that's so beautiful. I mean, man, so much to say and take in on that. If you were to go back 15 years, can you imagine yourself being able to slow down?
15 years, no.
You know what I mean?
Yeah.
And it's amazing is like when you're talking about what you guys are going to try and do as a church, and you were saying that we really want to kind of practice lingering and this like joy and just, and I do think about that first time we hung out, and we're at this table of 8 or 9, and then some movers and shakers at this table.
Yeah.
And it was like, just in this moment where like you and I are like at this circular table looking at each other, both tears in our eyes, but like we're lingering.
Yeah.
And again, nothing about where did you preach last? What did you do? No. It was just in the sense, like you were saying, like in the deepest of things. And I think finding meaning and being able to linger. And I just love that, like, that's what you do, like even last night we were hanging out and, having a conversation with a diver, at the restaurant. And it's just like, I wanted to talk to you, but there's a part of me that's like, let's just the conversation. And I felt like that guy just kept wanting to come and linger in what we were talking about. And I don't know, I just, that spiritual practice of just linger, just lingering in God's goodness.
You know what I saw when you were talking, because the way it happened is you asked about his watch. He had this cool watch. And then he ended up talking about, he was showing us some photos of some like incredible dive he did in Mexico. And what it made me think was, that C.S. Lewis quote where he's like, you've never met an ordinary human.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
Yeah.
But it takes, he doesn't say this, but this is my addition. It takes eyes to see the extraordinary,
Yeah.
And to have those eyes, it demands lingering. Like it doesn't, they're not contacts you wear at all times. They're like glasses you have to pull out of your front pocket, and it takes a little time to unfold and put it on.
Yeah.
And we I think we move so fast that everything feels ordinary. And we're moving fast looking for the extraordinary, but in reality, the extraordinary is like everywhere. We just don't slow down enough to see it. So we're just on this futile search for the extraordinary. And I love the way you said it, man. It's like the deepest of things.
Yeah.
Like my little garden and my son and my daughter and our chat last night and, those things.
Well, and I like, it's convicting for me because oftentimes if I play it back 15 years, I think the glasses that I was wearing, the contacts was, what can you do for me? What can you do for me? What can you do for me?
Yeah.
And it's not lingering, it's agenda. It's like, okay, great. Okay. And so I think just when there's, nothing but just this moment, but like, and I like how you talked about that in the Future of Everything with that whole kind of leaning towards and leaning forward. It's this does matter, but man, what's to come matters so much more. Yeah. And I want to bring as many people into linger in that reality for eternity, And so, Jay, thank you. Thanks just for, again, your example, who you are. If our listeners at Craft and Character wanted to learn more about WestGate or about Analog Church or you, where could they find you?
Yeah. Well, thank you for having me on. Our church is just westgatechurch.org. And then I have all my stuff just on a little website, jkimthinks.com, and books and preaching stuff and articles, I've worked on, and that's my handle wherever too, jkimthinks.
jkimthinks. Seriously, give him a follow. If you've not read Analog Church, pick it up. Just sit down. It's a book to linger in. It's a book that will get you thinking. There's a section that he does on Babel that is just, it's like worth the price of admission. So there is so much there. but it's the kind of book that I think will help you as people are returning back to church, back to the sanctuary, back to the facilities, for you to actually see people in real ways and linger in the right ways. So thanks so much for tuning in, everyone. Obviously, if there's anything I can do to ever serve you, you can shoot me an email at steve@steveryancarter.org. Also, I got to tell you, we did a little cohort this week. The great Mark Moore, he's a teaching pastor at CCV out in Phoenix, Arizona. We had 8 or 9 amazing lead pastors, church planners, teaching pastors. It's just so fun. They're going on a year-long cohort. We're kicking off a brand new cohort, and the coach is Nancy Beach. And so I'm excited for some women, some men to go on this journey. So you can learn more at theascentleader.org, or you can always go to craftoncharacter.org. Again, thanks so much, everyone, and let's this week practice the sacred art of lingering in God's goodness. Grace and peace.